No, really. 20 odd years and no one's asked yet. I did it. Hi, Middle Earthlings, and welcome to my humble home for the artists of the Tolkien sphere, aka the makers of Middle Earth. My name is María. I'm a maker of many mediums, and today I am so excited to present the first ever extended edition of the show. In other words, a bonus episode, thanks to Warner Brothers, who were kind enough to grant me press access on the big Lord of the Rings day at New York Comic Con. It was so lovely being able to do what we do on this channel, which is just have a series of little craft talks with the creatives of The War of the Rohirrim, which is, of course, the first Lord of the Rings feature film we've seen in a decade, which, as of this video being uploaded, hit cinemas worldwide in exactly 1 month. And on top of that, the end credits song, sung by Paris Paloma, who I've been obsessed with for years. Check out her music if you don't know her already, she's incredible. That drops tomorrow. Allow me to sidebar real quick. The snippet of the song that Warner Brothers sent me gave me full body chills. I'll throw it onto the end of the video, but I'm simply so excited as someone who has made a playlist of every single end credit song there's ever been on a Lord of the Rings film and listens to it every single day. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just really over the moon. But anyways, let's refocus. Rohirrim comes out in a month, and the sneak peeks we all saw at New York Comic Con looked beautiful. It felt like a real homecoming to Middle Earth. Like, it just felt very Tolkienian, and it looked gorgeous and it sounded gorgeous, and getting to talk to these artists about Middle Earth and about their craft was a really special experience in and of itself. So I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did. So without any further ado, I invite you all to join me as we journey into Rohan. Firstly, softball question. If you could ask the professor any one question, what would it be?
That's not a softball question.
I lied.
I think I would ask him what is Ungoliant really? That's what I would ask. Ungoliant, I know, is a larger force of darkness and ends up going sort of out into the darkness, but what is Ungoliant really, and where does she go? That's what I want.
Well, that's interesting, because then we start to get into the nitty-gritty of what is the void, what is beyond the confines of what the Valar know.
Yep.
For sure. Okay, interesting.
I would want to talk about that, the deep nerd stuff.
As an artist, I talk a lot about artistic ancestors, like those whose works come before us and inform who we are, how we make. What aspect of Tolkien's work do you feel like has informed your artistry the most?
Oh, man. I mean, to me, the idea that it's an evergreen idea, the idea that ultimately real good in the world is driven by people who just want to live a quiet day-to-day life and love each other, and that they're not looking to be heroes. They might become heroes, but that the true goodness in the world are people who value simple things like sitting around a table with their friends and family and sharing food and drink. Like, to me, that is his greatest message, and the thing that comes across in all his work is his love for just, I don't want to say common man, because that's not how he looked at it, but his love for just regular people doing regular things. And I am one of those people. I'm a lazy person who likes to sit around with my friends. So for me, it's like, yay, I can be a hero too. So.
This was a massive project in terms of scale, and we're handling like studios and budget and anime and audience and everything. What was the biggest challenge you overcame straddling art and business in this project?
Oh, I mean, really, this project, it's that no one has done anything like this before.
Right.
There hasn't been a 2D animated film in the U.S. since The Princess and the Frog. I mean, any 2D film you've seen in the U.S. has been anime that came from Japan. So there hasn't been one, and certainly not a major Western IP like this that's getting a true anime treatment. So 99% of my job was explaining Tolkien to the anime folks and explaining anime to the Tolkien folks. Back and forth. I was a bridge for the whole thing because I was the only person who kind of straddled both worlds. So that was a huge challenge. And then explaining anime and the anime audience to our wonderful partners at Warner Brothers, because they had never released anything like this before. So we all were doing something that nobody had done before, and so it was very, very hard, I won't lie. But it came out great, so.
Softball question to begin with, and perhaps not so easy. If you could ask the professor any question, what would it be? Ooh, really? 20 odd years and no one's asked yet. I did it.
I'd probably ask him how angry he is at adaptations. No.
No.
No, I wouldn't.
I'm sure he'd be delighted. Many minds and hands.
Okay, I would probably be about Tom Bombadil, to be honest, and I actually appreciate the mystery of Tom Bombadil, and I know that he saw that character very much in that way. But I think I would like to say, I'm glad you did it. I just want to understand why you did it and why he's there a little bit more. He is a mystery, and that's probably why I'm drawn to him. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that segues quite nicely into another question I had, which is mysteries and untold stories. And I love that you chose Héra as the window into this story, as the untold story, which often happen to be women in terms of untold stories. How did you sort of walk the line between wanting to leave things as the mysterious holes in the legendarium versus something that is worth plumbing, worth exploring?
I think, you know what, there's a line that the writers came up with which I love, and it's at the end of the narration that introduces the character, like it's like a little mini prologue per se, so just before the titles roll, and Éowyn says, by her hand many great deeds were done, but do not look for tales of her in the old songs. There are none. And as soon as I saw that, I thought that's why we're doing this. That's exactly it. She is the unnamed daughter, and she is. There are many iterations of women like that through history. You know, so many, and yet often I've always said, to me, one of the things that attracted me about this is the wreckage of war. You know, that this is also about the wreckage of war. Well, who deals with the wreckage of war? Women. Yeah.
Who picks up the mess?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You have obviously spent so much time with the text for decades, so much time in this world. What did you have to return to? What was the most challenging research you had to do in the making of this project?
This interesting because some of it was going back and just making sure that we hadn't missed anything, if that makes sense, to try and find any threads that perhaps ran through the books, not just in the appendices, but ran through the books that we were missing. And then I actually turned back to Professor Tolkien's own life. So I reread Humphrey Carpenter, which was really interesting. And do you know what I found in Humphrey Carpenter, which is a brilliant biography, by the way? It's an interesting bit of trivia, but it I don't know, it was like that little light that keeps guiding you, that you know you're going in the right direction. And you're an artist, so you'll appreciate this. So when Professor Tolkien first got his scholarship to Oxford, Humphrey Carpenter writes about the fact that he never came from money. He had very little money. He got a stipend with his scholarship to Oxford. So he had first time, and they call them digs in Oxford, but they're like a little apartment where the students live. And he had a little bit of money to go and furnish his digs. First thing he did was buy 2 Japanese woodcut prints.
An anchor for all of this, how marvelous. Okay.
And actually, if you look at Professor Tolkien's own work, you can his own artwork, you can see it. You can see it.
The sketches of Smaug.
You can see it. You can see it.
Yes, yeah. I'm there. I'm right there with you.
Okay, I love it. Yeah.
For those who are lovers of the deep Tolkien, the expanded legendarium, what are you hoping that they most receive from War of the Rohirrim, this new exciting chapter of this untold story of the legendarium?
I think, I remember reading, I think it was in Professor Tolkien's letters, that he saw, he eschewed the notion of allegory. He didn't like it, but
ardently.
Yeah, quite ardently. Yeah. So he saw it more as, he said, if it's anything, he saw the mythology that he had created as an exemplar, and what he didn't mean that moralistically, as I'm sure you understand. What he meant by that was that what you have here with this work, he wanted to be a reflection, I think, of his faith, his deep faith, and that what he understood by that, his faith, was always there is hope, and that hope can only exist where people where people allow their humanity to be the most important thing that drives them, their shared humanity, more importantly. And so there is a strong thread that runs through this film, literally. I think it's already been out there in the trailer where she says people need, Owen, beautifully performed by Lorraine Ashbourne, says people need hope, Héra. And that to me is, yeah, it's Professor Tolkien speaking to us all.
Kamiyama-san, you talked a little bit in the panel about like how Tolkien actually is very accessible to like Japanese audiences and how it formed a blueprint for the West in terms of fairy tales. What was your first exposure to Tolkien growing up?
トルキンに初めてのなんかご露出された時っていつなんですかねと。
一番最初は小学校3年生ぐらいだったと思いますけど、日本語に訳された小説を読んだのが最初だったと思います。子供用に作られてたと思うんですけど、それでもすごく難しくて、最初はトールキンの世界をまだその時は把握することはできなかったですね。
So when it was exposed was when he was in elementary school, when he was in third grade, and it was way too faithfully translated, meaning it was a very formal Japanese, and so it was very dense for him to get through it. So the first impression, first exposure was, wow, this is a dense classic, but too hard for me. It was initial impression, yeah.
It was very dense for me as well when I first started reading the Silmarillion at age 10. I didn't get it through.
Silmarillion at age 10, okay. 10歳の時読んでたっつってね。
Also, I'm very curious about if you could ask the professor any one question, what would it be?
トルキンプロフェッサーに一つだけ質問ができたとしたら何を聞きたいんですか？
いや当時はおそらくファンタジーっていうジャンルが子供向けというふうにちょっと低俗なものと思われてたんじゃないかなと思うんです。当時の時代背景はちょっと僕も分かんないんだけどね。でその中でも彼はおそらくファンタジーっていうジャンルにプライドを持って作ってたと思うんですよね。だからそこを彼がそのモチベーションをねこう持ち続けた理由、僕もやっぱりそのアニメーションって子供向けのものっていうところがあるんだけど、大人の鑑賞に耐える映画にアニメーションもできると僕は思ってずっと作ってきてたので、トールキンにもし質問することができるとしたら、あれを書き続けた大人向けのジャンルとして書き続けられたあなたの動機は何だったんですかっていうことを聞きたいなと思いますよね。
So as an animation director myself, I mean, animation can often be thought as for children. But he's been actually using the medium to do a mature storytelling, and I think he imagines that the Tolkien's time too, that the fantasy stories were probably treated like some fairy tale for children, and so but he's the one who actually created this universe and a story that elevated it to a literary level, classic literary. Not only that, it's an exciting story for adults to enjoy. So if I were to ask him a question, what drove you to do this when everybody was looking down on the genre?
What were differences you noticed, like culturally, like mentally, in the way that people engage, artists do work in the West? That like, were you in a position where you had to like explain like a different point of view or that sort of thing?
ちょっとなんか日本のアーティストとしてやっぱり今回はもうこんなにでかいフランチャイズなんで、それをやっぱり欧米で作られたもんだから、こう欧米のアーティストたちとのコラボレーションするところで何かこう違いを感じたんですか？どういう経験だったんですかね？
そうですね、普段日本でアニメーションを作ってる規模よりはすごく大きくて、ハリウッドで映画を作ってきた人たちと 仕事をするっていうのがもうある種全てにおいてスケール感が違う部分があったと思うんですよね。予算にしてもそうですし、公開規模にしてもそうですよね。それは正直最初はちょっと圧倒される部分っていうのがあったんですけれども、逆に日本でこうやってたことっていうのが決してこう通用しないわけではないんだなと、技術的にもこう哲学的にも、同じ映画を作ってる人間として決してこう劣る部分はないというふうにも感じていたので、もっとこう自分たちがね早くアメリカと一緒にね映画を作っていくチャンスっていうのが作れればよかったなと改めて思いましたけれども、すごく大きな違い自体はないんだっていう気がしましたよね。
So I mean, the scale of this production actually is much bigger than a typical production in Japan, and so it did have some trepidation when joining the production and actually starting it because and there are a lot of differences in terms of how things work, but in terms of the artistry or the level of artistry or skill set, I mean, there's not much difference here, and also when it comes to art. He didn't feel that there was a huge divide or chasm between the Western way of doing it and the Japanese way of doing it. I think it was a great experience for him doing this project. But going forward, I think should be doing more of these kinds of collaboration, where the artists come together to produce works like this because it does produce something special. Yeah.
First question across the board, maybe it's a softball, maybe it's not. If you could ask the professor any one question, what would it be?
The professor?
Professor Tolkien himself.
Tolkien himself.
Yeah, no pressure.
Why me? That's what I'd want to know. Why me? Why was I chosen to do this? Yes.
So you're like, maybe the Valar were involved, maybe this was divine.
I just want to know, where did he first get the idea to start writing these characters, because it's such a fantastical world. It's sort of, and it's so detailed. It's sort of hard to imagine that it's all come out of like one mind, So where he got the inspiration for these characters would definitely be my number one question, yeah.
I know that for all actors, every character has like a little piece of ourselves. Yes. What piece of you do you think lives in your character?
I mean, there's a few. I think, Wulf is fiercely loyal to his family. I find myself fiercely loyal to my family. And Philippa gave me an amazing note about, there's always thanks for that, guy. Philippa gave me an amazing note about, there's a vulnerability in Wulf. And I think when you think villain, you don't often jump to the word vulnerability when it comes to villainous. You find there's always like a huge bravado and stuff, which Wulf does have, but I think his is definitely steeped in vulnerability, and I think that's what gives him a niche as a villain.
From this story, and obviously no spoilers, what do you hope that audiences retain most? Because obviously Tolkien loves a theme, Tolkien loves a grand, sweeping epic, but what are you hoping to most resonate with audiences in the story?
I think, like I said before, I think the family connections that both of the two lead characters, that Wulf and Héra have, are the driving force behind it. And I think their relationship from when they were children, they've known each other most of their lives, and they were bonded by. I think they're bonded by the fact that they have such a fierce loyalty for their families. But I think essentially that is also what divides them. So I think if you can take away the fact that they do have a huge love and respect for each other, and I think, like I said, that's what divides them, but it's also what bonded them when they were children.
First things first question I ask everybody, if you could ask the professor himself any one question, what would it be? No pressure.
I wouldn't ask that. No, I think I would ask him how did he dream of these places? Did he dream of these characters? Was it people he knew? Did he draw on people around him for the characters? I think that would be it. It's are there family members who are like Gimli? You know what I mean? That's what I'd want to know.
And who's Bilbo? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Who's that? Who's that? Who's Frodo in this?
I love that.
Sam.
Right, Sam. Like the who's holding it down.
Holding the family down, J.R.R.
Absolutely. Truly, the first time I visited his grave and I saw like Baron and Luthien on the tombstone, tears, weeping.
I honestly, I was like, this is too much even for you. Too intense. Too much.
For sure. Speaking of intensity, what a wild experience you've had over the last, was it 3 years? Yeah. What was the singular, like, what was a point of intensity that stood out for you of like, actually, this is the wildest experience I've ever had?
Oh, I mean, there's a couple. I think honestly, it was a lot of the fight sequences. Because when we did the first pass initially, Phoebe, one of our writers, handed me like a tiny sword and a tiny shield because she was like, maybe this will help. And I'm just stood in a booth holding these things going, what the hell is going on? And then towards the end, when I knew the character, I knew she was, I felt so rooted in her. It felt so easy. And when I came in for the last pass, there was still a bit of fear and a little bit of trepidation. But then the minute I got into it, I went, oh no, I know this now. And I know, the noises and all of those sort of really intense emotions and all the fight noises have to come from really deep within you because you can't pull them out physically. You've got to push them out with your voice. And so I think it's taught me an invaluable lesson that I will take into other areas of my acting as well. Yeah.
Where did you look in yourself to pull out Héra?
I grew up also on a farm in Scotland. I love the outdoors. I love being in nature. And I think, I love that about her. I love that she really only ever wanted to be outside. I'm lucky enough in London to have a garden, and I'm out there a lot, and I feel incredibly rooted being able to do that. I think, I'd like to think I've got even an ounce of her bravery, so I looked into that at times when I'd been brave, in my family, and in times when I'd been brave for my family, and drawn some of that as well. I think that was it, yeah.
I love what you said about bravery because I think a lot about how in the West we don't have everyday models of bravery. We have the big heroes. Yes. So if you don't have to, but if you're comfortable, like, would you be interested in getting into like one of those examples you pulled from of like an everyday moment where you were brave for your family? Give me no. You can say no.
No, I mean, I think you constantly bring brave for your family. I think sometimes you put on a brave face because you don't want to, especially as a child, you don't want to scare your parents. And if you're feeling a certain way about something, I think you have to, I don't think anyone should ever suffer alone, but I think I talk to my girlfriends a lot because I want to work this out without potentially going to my parents and going, hi, I'm just really sad about this thing, because they'll be fantastic about it, and I think everyone's parents would, hopefully everyone's parents will be, but sometimes you want to be brave because you've seen them be so brave for you as well. I think that, there's always, especially in my family, if there's, I think, a real bravery that comes with sicknesses and with deaths, and I think if you're able as a family to sort of come together in those moments, I think it's invaluable.
If you could ask the professor one question, what would it be? Whoever wants to go first.
I'd love to talk to him about Eowyn, honestly, because she's my favorite character in the books. So I would love to just sit and have a cup of tea with him and kind of learn more about, her through him.
Good answer. Big fan. Arty? Follow up?
Whether the reunification of the Ents and the Ent wives ever takes place.
Other than the Legendarium itself, what were mentor texts and literary influences that you pulled from in your own writing? How was your writing influenced by writing for animation, for anime specifically? Talk to me about that.
In terms of the animation of it, honestly, we were just encouraged to write the most engaging, enthralling story, powerful story that we possibly could. So, I mean, that wasn't really part of the process.
That was the actors that really had to do the heavy lifting there for the anime side of things, because they're hand-drawn characters. To bring them to life is a whole nother level. And so we were like, here you go, off you go. And they did incredibly well.
But honestly, it was kind of just going back and watching the extended editions and the behind the scenes and just remembering how and why we all fell in love with those films and trying to make sure that not that we did a good job, that we gave that feeling to the next generation. Honestly, that was a big part of it. It was just trying to secure that energy as opposed to getting snowballed under the stress of trying to create something great.
Truthfully, we didn't really think to look beyond Tolkien. I mean, there's that's history. There's so much there, and that was, it was like Arty keeps saying, it's about reining it in, really, rather than, it's within his rich history, his world building is just hidden so much. Yeah. So it was quite exciting to have a story where we could kind of go into those cracks and see what we could pull from and see what we could fill in.
In terms of how Tolkien's works have sunken into our bones as artists, of how they've shaped the way we navigate the world, the way we make, what aspect of his work do you feel has stayed in you the most and has shaped the way you create? I love asking a question where people exchange a meaningful glance. This is
This isn't us buying time. That's a very inspired question. It's about breathing humanity into it, and it's kind of interesting thinking about that, and then about anime, which is supposedly devoid of humans, right? It's a sort of drawn, especially this, it's 2D cold pencil.
God forbid.
And so it's about sort of trying to get that energy into what we were doing. There's a reason why people love the Hobbits. They're so full of life and love. And, there's a reason why people who would usually never connect with fantasy can fall in love with the world of Middle Earth. Because it's so heavily based in emotion and these very true human experiences that we sort of allowed to lose ourselves into behind the sort of edifice of high fantasy. If that, does that sort of make sense? It's about the heart and soul of what he managed to do behind sort of creatures that aren't real,
Yeah, you forget. It feels real.
Yeah, and that's sort of talking about the anime thing is kind of that, it's how do we make this feel as real and grounded and as emotional as possible, even if we know that it's going to be drawn, and now seeing what Kamiyama and the team have managed to do, it does just feel full of emotion. It does feel real, and it's not just the visuals, but it's also the sound. The sound guys, they've just knocked it out of the park.
That was when I started to get butterflies, honestly, was hearing the mix come into play, hearing the score that Stephen Gallagher has done with a few themes, from Howard Shore, but that was when all the rings of it really just started to kick in and it all came together, and the beauty of what Kenji Kamiyama's done, and I just sort of sat back and really started getting butterflies.